The Detroit Lions have lost to the New York Giants in their first preseason game of the 2024 NFL season. And both of these teams are teams that we cover. The Detroit Lions are a team that we have covered a lot. The New York Giants, not as often, but they still get talked about a bit. And we are going to talk about that preseason game. What stuck out? What do I want to see these teams work on? And the new kickoff rule, just because I feel like that's going to be like an overarching narrative. That's coming up next on No Buts About It. All right, so first off, let's start with the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions are a team that obviously has a ton of expectations coming into the 2024 NFL season. They made it all the way to the NFC Championship last season before losing to the San Francisco 49ers. And unfortunately, they started off the 2024 preseason with an L to the New York Giants. However, there were still some promising things to talk about, but we're going to talk about the bad things first. Bad. The pass rush. I was not impressed by the Detroit Lions pass rush. It is something that was not great last season. Aiden Hutchinson was pretty much doing all the work. They did do stuff in the offseason to help improve that with Marcus Davenport and with DJ Reader to kind of create a balance. However, there was no depth. There's no building upon the starters. If any of those starting guys get hurt, I didn't see really anyone who stood out for me that I would trust for the Detroit Lions to go out there and get the job done. And the reason I say that is because we're talking about the New York Giants. The New York Giants have a terrible offensive line when it's all the starters out there. And this was against their backups. Their backups were bad. And they just are. I mean, they're a lower caliber than the starters that are already bad. I mean, these guys are all more athletic and bigger than me, but still, they aren't getting the job done for Daniel Jones. But the offensive line last night looked great. Drew Lock had a ton of time. Tommy DeVito had a ton of time. The Lions pass rushers were very rarely getting inside the pocket unless the quarterback left the pocket. Then they were getting to him. But aside from that, I didn't really see a ton of things I would consider great quarterback pressures, great defensive pass rush wins. However, that being said, the Lions defense was not in complete disarray. I did enjoy what I saw from both Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rackstraw Jr., who are both rookies this coming season. So Terrion Arnold being a round one pick, he didn't really play a whole lot. He's expected to be a starter right off the bat. Him and Brian Branch are two young stars in this secondary that are going to hopefully create a lot of turnovers, create a lot of pass breakups for the Detroit Lions secondary on a team that kind of struggled at times last year. Ennis Rackstraw Jr. is another guy who he stood out to me. I'd like to see more snaps from him. His name did get called a few times, but it's hard to tell on the broadcast who is doing what. And I haven't seen all 22 footage yet of these teams of this game, and I don't know if they put it out for the preseason. But both of those guys did look promising. We're going to need to see more of both of them. It's only preseason game one, so this is all quick just conclusions, jumping to conclusions. And players have proven analysts wrong before. They've switched up on you, maybe regular season, finally get into the groove. And Ennis Rockstraw Jr. he comes out and he's a lightning rod, and he turns into like Deron Bland, and he just can't stay away from intercepting the ball. We'll see what happens. But both of those guys I thought had great debuts, but someone who had a phenomenal debut for the Detroit Lions. And I was talking to Dion from Dose of Dion about this last night. If you're a Lions fan and you are not subscribed to Dose of Dion 2.0, after you finish this video, go ahead, type that into the search bar. That's DOSEOFDION 2.0. He has great content. I mean, he's a great guy, but his content is phenomenal. He goes so in depth to all these players, and a lot of players that a lot of other channels don't cover. So go check him out. But we were talking about Hendon Hooker, and Hendon Hooker looked so good last night. He actually finished as the Detroit Lions rushing leader for the game, and he only played like half a quarter, and he didn't come in until the second half, and he ended up leaving with a concussion, or he's in the concussion protocol. I don't know if we have a confirmed concussion yet, but Hendon Hooker looked so good. He had an arm. He was coming out. He was throwing right. He was throwing left. He was a field general out there. He was doing great. And something that this is going to get me. I can see this maybe getting me in trouble. But the way he ran was so similar to a quarterback that I just love to watch run. I'm not a huge fan of mobile quarterbacks because they get hurt more often. But there's one guy who I just am. Whenever he does stuff, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's football, and that's this guy right here, Josh Allen. He's just a tank, Like if you watch him, he wants the contact. He's running, he's dropping the shoulder, he's challenging defenders to come and try and tackle him when he's taking off with the ball, and that's what Hendon Hooker was doing last night. Such an exciting player for the Detroit Lions. I don't think he's going to come in and take the starting position, but this opens up the playbook for the Detroit Lions at the quarterback position because he is a perfect juxtaposition to Jared Goff. Jared Goff is your classic pocket passer, just throw it, doesn't like to move, stays right where he is. He can move, but he's not really great at it. Hendon Hooker, oh man, he can come out and be wildcat. I think he opens up the playbook. You can bring him in for specific plays. And I think Detroit Lions fans, assuming he can stay healthy, he missed all of last season. He's a second-year player, but assuming he can stay healthy and get through this concussion protocol quickly, I think he's a great player for the Detroit Lions. And I think Detroit Lion fans should be excited for what he can bring to the table for them, even if it's not as a starting quarterback. Now, let's move on to the other side of the field. And really what I was looking at for these guys, the New York Giants. First of all, there were no receivers on either team that really stuck out to me. There was no one in the passing game where I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he caught that. It just didn't happen. They're pretty mediocre backup wide receivers, what I expected. However, Isaiah McKenzie was dropping the ball a lot. So on the punt returns. So going to need some work there. They have Gunnar Olszewski as punter and kick returner on the depth chart. I personally don't know who that is. I'm sorry, Gunnar. But Isaiah McKenzie is not the answer. So those guys were disappointing. But the running backs, I think all New York Giants fans are paying attention to the running backs. And I think most NFL fans are paying attention to the New York running backs because right now they have Devin Singletary. And Devin Singletary, he's like a guy, he can get the job done. He can catch the ball a little bit. He can run the ball a little bit. He's okay. But he's not Saquon Barkley. And Saquon Barkley, you drafted in 2018 thinking he was going to be with the team forever. He was your franchise guy. He was turning the team around. And then he goes and he joins the Philadelphia Eagles, a division rival in free agency. That's nuts. And now, all of a sudden, the New York Giants have no one, really. I mean, Malik Neighbors is a rookie wide receiver. He might pan out. That's exciting. But aside from that, I mean, you lost Darren Waller, who was your big free agency signing at tight end. He retired after not really doing much last season. Saquon Barkley, who was like the face of the offense. There's no wide receivers that really stick out to me for the New York Giants. There's young guys who have potential, Wayndell Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, both possibilities, but they haven't wowed me yet. So I was looking at the running backs. Who is going to fill that void left by Saquon Barkley? And I think I have the answer. And it's early. It's Eric Gray. Now, Eric Gray is a second-year player for the New York Giants, and he looked phenomenal last night. He might – I'm going to go ahead and give Eric Gray player of the game from last night because he just looked so good. He was a patient runner, but he was an aggressive runner. And what I mean by that is he found whenever he found a hole, he charged at it. There was no waiting. There was no question about that whether that was the hole he should take. But he also wasn't charging up trying to make his own space. He was a patient runner. He let his offensive line, his blockers, do the work and find a hole for him. And because of that, he came away with 52 yards on 4 rushing attempts and 2 rushing touchdowns. So he averaged 13 yards a rush attempt. Super exciting for the New York Giants. I'm not sure how his pass blocking grades are. I think Saquon was a bit better at that as well. So that's going to be something you have to replace as well. But I think Eric Gray does have some potential to usurp Devin Singletary as the RB1 in New York. Another guy who he got a few touches last night and showed some potential. The rookie out of Purdue University, Tyrone Tracy Jr. And he, again, if you've watched my running back video, this running back class isn't amazing to me. It's not super exciting. But he showed some hope. He showed some potential. I can see where the New York Giants were going with him and what they want from him. But I still think Eric Gray has the upper hand. They're not super invested into Devin Singletary either. He's got a 2026 out, I believe, and they only guaranteed him $9.5 million. You could start Eric Gray over Devin Singletary, I think, especially if Eric Gray really shows potential over Devin Singletary and is just a better player overall. But that's all I got for the New York Giants and the Detroit Lions. Let's talk about this new kickoff rule. So I found this graphic to help explain this. The landing zone is where the 2 returners are. And the ball, this is the part that I learned yesterday. I didn't know this. The ball it can't skip into the landing zone. It has to land in the landing zone, which makes sense. It is the landing zone. And if it skips, the return team automatically gets the ball at the 40, which that's huge. That has huge potential. Imagine it's a playoff game and just somehow, for whatever, a playoff game in the snow, a playoff game in the rain, if you will. And the kicker just whiffs it. Like something happens. And all of a sudden, say it's a 2-point game, and I only have to go 30 yards to get my kicker into field goal range to win a playoff game. That's huge. That rule could have huge potential. That could be a big deal. What do you think about that? Do you think that the 40, and I'm talking like where that kickoff start line was where they were saying he would get the ball? I mean, he doesn't have to do anything. And we're talking like the returns haven't been huge so far. The returns are still ending around the 20, 25 area. So it's not like they're usually getting it out to the 40. And I don't know how often that's going to happen that they're going to whiff the kick. But do you think that the 40 is a little too generous for a penalty for the kicker not getting it into the landing zone? Let me know what you think down in the comments. I think that's crazy. I think we're going to be talking about that all season. I think there's going to be games lost because of that rule. I think there are going to be playoff games lost because of that rule. And if the Cincinnati Bengals lose a playoff game because of that rule, I am going to be livid. So Evan McPherson, make sure you're getting the ball into the landing zone. But that is my summary for the Detroit Lions, New York Giants preseason week 1 game. And I appreciate you for sticking by. And before you leave, just want to ask you to petition you to subscribe. It helps us out. We're trying to turn this into a full-time thing. 316 people have already subscribed. A bunch of you watch, but you're not subscribed, and we don't want you to miss anything. We appreciate you for watching no matter what, though. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. But until next time, I'm Josh Butts. For No Butts About It. Go do something nice for someone.